Well, welcome to a very special edition of Fork in the Road, and sitting down with a great long-time friend of mine who did play. He was at the Collingwood Football Club. He made his name at the Dandenong Football Club, where he did hold the premiership. He actually held the ball aloft after the final siren. At the Frankston Footy Club, he's had a decorated career in the VFA. He's been a VFL state representative, but he also is the brother of a Collingwood legend in Darren Millane. I welcome my old mate, Sean Millane. How are you going, mate?
Mate, congratulations, mate, on your successful podcast. But good to be here, mate. It was good to have a chat with you again.
And how's the lockdown been treating you? I see from a physical point of view, you've been quite busy, and not in a physical sense that everyone would probably usually think, Sean.
Yeah, no, to say the least, I've been in the panel shop. Had a procedure, and then also a couple of operations, a wrist operation, knee operation. So, yeah, which when you have an operation, you have the COVID test, and then you have to have a stricter lockdown. So it's been quite isolated.
Now, I've been very fortunate. I haven't had to go through the unpleasantness of the COVID test. What is it actually like? Is it the brain tickler that everyone speaks of?
Nah, look, I don't think it was that bad. It's they go down your throat first. They stick it down your throat, and you might be able to gag, and then sort of up your nose, and that gives you a bit of a tickle. But it's not as bad as what some people are making it out to be. But no, it is what it is.
Yeah. Now, growing up in Noble Park, what is it about Noble Park? It's the place where the great Glenn Archer is from, and it's the home to the Millane family. What was it like growing up in Noble Park in your eyes? Because you've got some people I've just mentioned there that are not scared to take a backward step at all.
I suppose when you put it that way, yeah, they do make that list. Oh, look, Noble Park was good. I think no one really knew about Noble Park until the 70s, I think, when Mad Max, it might have been the early days, Mad Max, it put us on the map. But no, it was like any other suburb. It was always footy during the winter, cricket during the summer. And there was always people playing on the street. It was good fun. There was a lot of kids. It was a sort of growing area at the time. I think Noble Park Junior Football Club, and then also Parkmore come a bit later, were two of the biggest junior football clubs going around. So there was a lot of kids, and it was a lot of fun growing up.
Yeah. And you did actually spend some time at Collingwood. So from a playing point of view, what was it like for you to go to Collingwood at that stage? And then you had having your famous brother there at the same time.
Yeah, look, when I sort of look back at that, and when my sort of career at Dandenong, I was sort of played in the guts and just always sneak forward. Whereas when I went to Collingwood, I think they were looking for another Darren. I played on the wing, which I never played. Well, when I first started in the VFA, they didn't have wings. They didn't have wings till 92. There was no wings in the VFA. So it was sort of a different role for myself. And I felt that's what they were looking for. And I just felt that obviously it was big shoot. But I do tell everyone I did have Darren covered in the backyard. But that was only because he couldn't hurt me because Mum would tell him off. But no, it was a little bit different. And I think that the following pre-season 91, I remember doing a stint at the Bears and with Robert Walls, and I reckon I got closer there than I did at Collingwood because I think, obviously they're looking for another Darren.
I know, but it's also a little bit unfair because what are you from a height point of view? What are you?
The Collingwood 6 footer. I'm just sort of just under, and he was 6'2", 6'3", I was at 6'2", I think,
Yeah. Yeah, so it's probably a little bit unfair that they're probably asking you to fill those shoes going to the wing. And
well, it's probably looking back, it's probably more of an odd than anything else because not many other people could do it either. So, no, look, I'm proud of it. And I must admit, when I was sort of playing in the VFA at first, a few people I used to cop a bit. You only get to go because you're Darren's brother, and I used to say, oh well, they obviously don't know what they're talking about because maybe the first look in, maybe half a dozen games, and if it was no good, they'd probably flip me. But I seemed to last there for a while, so I was proud and happy with what I achieved.
Yeah, and speaking of which, like I suppose one of the great memories to you is you holding the ball aloft. Was nearly 12 months apart to the day that you both actually did the same thing. How How special was that, like, to be able to do that? That when Darren held the ball aloft in the 1990 grand final in those last moments, but then fast forward 12 months and you're doing exactly the same thing, it would have been pretty awesome.
Oh, mate, it was an unbelievable feeling. And as soon as the siren went, that was the first thing that went through my mind. I had the ball. I was running in towards goals, and the siren went. I remember looking to just put the ball up in the air, and I ran off. I actually ran off the ground, and the umpire asked for the ball. And I told him in no uncertain terms he wasn't getting it. And I ran off and gave it to Mum. And then so I was actually ran up and then trying to get back to the players because everyone ran on the ground. It was hard to get back to the players to celebrate initially, but I did, it was still to this day. I remember the following year in 92, I went up to Queensland and John, my older brother, was playing for Southport. Yeah. And Cameron O'Brien, who played at the back in the day, I think he had to go to Collingwood and all series, but all played at the Bears. Yeah, he was coaching Southport. And he asked the runner to come out to him when there's 30 seconds to go, a minute to go. And he was actually yelling out, kick the ball to John, kick the ball to John. But never made it to him. But no, that's a very special moment for me and something I'll cherish forever.
What would you say would be the biggest misconception about Darren? Because look, even talking to a lot of people, and I know, the avid Collingwood supporter that I was, and Darren was my favourite player, but Eddie Maguire said to me he used to go into hospital like pretty regularly. So what was, from the outside, obviously we see this, the Darren Millane that we see as the real strong, tough player, but what was the biggest misconception about Darren?
I think sort of the Wayne family is that they're just hard. But he was just on the ground. Yeah, he was fearless. But off the ground, and Mum used to say this too, that there'd be times where, because we still lived at home at that period too. There was times where he'd get home from training, he wouldn't get home till 11 o'clock because he'd go visit people in hospital 2 or 3 times. And there's a video attributed to Darren Millane, and Tony Shaw speaks about how the club requested them quite often go, and they'd go. But once Darren went there and saw someone and had a bond, he'd keep going back. And it was quite often that, that many people come up to us later on. I still get people come up to me to this day and say how special he was and what he'd done for them. And it makes me proud. And as I said, people don't realise he had a heart of gold.
And look, and as I said, for those that followed Collingwood, I actually nearly don't think the effort that he did to play through that 1990 grand final series with a broken thumb, pretty much for, I think he did it against Fitzroy. That was
last game.
Yeah. Oh, it was in the game against North Melbourne.
Yeah, it was not. Yeah, pretty sure it was the last game against North.
Pretty funny side story. I will digress for 1 second. That Glenn Archer, that's actually in this photo, that's actually sitting. Oh, sorry, the painting behind me. You do know the story that Glenn Archer was actually going to jump the fence, and if John Longmire kicked his 100th goal, that Glenn Archer had threatened he was going to jump the fence and belt John Longmire after he kicked his 100th goal.
Yeah, well, I remember because Arch, he went to Darren's 21st. That's something he told me years ago. I didn't, obviously, back when we were young then, and he said I don't know, through family friends, he ended up going to Darren's 21st, and he was huge. And that's why, as I said, there's a few stories in that painting that when Jamie Cooper and I spoke about it, and Arch had actually, I'd spoken to him, obviously met him over the years and was become mates with him too, and he told me what he thought, and that's the reason why he's in the actual painting, because the way he expressed the way he felt about Darren.
Yeah. So yeah, that final series, from your point of view, what was it like seeing go through that pain each week? Because, like I said, I don't think in the history of AFL football has any footballer gone through that amount of pain and get through a final series and still play like he did.
It was funny that obviously when 12 months later we lost Darren, and actually I'm out now. This is sort of, I've just bought the family home, so we're sort of out the back, which is where it was Darren's room initially and become mine. Obviously we put a few things, I just packed a few things up, and it would have been probably 5 years ago, if that. I went through a few things and I found 3 bits of paper. I sat down, I was nearly in tears. It said he must have been going to write a book, because it said the grand final thumb and chapter question mark, question mark, question mark. And then I went through it, and he was coming home from training, and he had a fitness test. And he said he went in, he goes, I was going to try to pull the wool over Lee Matthews' eyes. Yeah. And he said he threw the ball up, and I can picture him doing it, throwing the ball up. And he said that JB, the surgeon, said, look, don't need to give it a test, just he'll jab it up and it'll be right. And he dropped the ball. And Lethal goes, no, I think we'll go out and have a test, son. And so he went, oh, God. So they went out on the ground and just kicking to him about 30 metres away. And he goes, I can mark it easily because I can pull my thumb. And he goes, then Lee, so I thought twice, the second time I've pulled it over the great Lee Matthews' eyes. But then Lee goes, oh, hang on, son, and started drilling it at him from about 10 metres away. And he reckons he got to the point he was in that much pain. And then Matthews turned around to Ronnie Richards, who was one of the selectors at the time, and said, oh, he's right, and walked off. Darren was driving home that night, pulled over, was sweating, nearly pulled out. He said he was going to get home, and he goes, and he thought, nah, I'll wait till I get home. He goes, had he pulled out before that first final, that would have been the series. So he said he was writing in his spell store. I've got it packed away there. And he turned around and basically said, the next morning, he goes, I woke up and I felt all right, and how, I don't know, but and then the rest is history.
And that was before the first final against West Coast?
Yeah. That's when he had his first test, because he said, oh, I won't need one. And but there's a funny thing, in that tribute, Darren Millane, you see this, and I didn't see this till later on, and I don't know why, to this day, I don't know, it was something he needed to do before a game, but you can see before the game, there's some footage before the game, and he's putting on the tracksuit. Yeah. And back then, the tracksuits had, the real tight elastic around the wrist, and they had those looking vinyl, shiny fabric. But you can see how much pain he was trying to get this tracksuit top on. And as we spoke about before, it was quite a nice day. Yeah. And to this day, I still don't know why, because he was going through so much pain trying to put it on. I don't know why he would. But no, he went through a lot of pain, but didn't show it. And what he achieved was simply amazing.
Yeah, because in essence, before he had to re-break it in order to then put it in the cast for the rest of the week, didn't they?
Yeah. And all week he'd be in plaster. He'd do the running and do the ball work with one hand. And then they'd cut it off and strap him up and jab him before quarter time, half time, through and after the game, and then put it back on. And it wasn't until the next morning that he was in a bit of barney rubble, but then he just got to the point where he just got used to it.
Yeah. And then you fast forward, which is quite amazing that when we're having a chat and having a drink, that today's October 6th, 1990, we fast forward to grand final day, and then the Pies break their 32-year drought, and he holds the ball aloft at the end of the game. Again, like even from your point of view, I know you told me a story off air, but if you want to tell us about the story that number one, tell us how you felt when you saw Darren had the ball at the end of the game, and then actually what that means now. But then also the funny story that you said when he spotted you on the lap after the game.
Well, at the time, I suppose, wasn't the ball probably became more significant 12 months later when I had a Dandenong. So that sort of at that time, that wasn't sort of, it was special for him at that time, but it became special for me 12 months later. But it was an eerie feeling. You're sort of sitting after the final siren had gone, and we were sitting there. And back then, I was saying you could buy cans. And so John and I loaded up on the cans. So we had a heap of cans, John, my older brother. And so we're throwing these cans down. And when the siren went, everyone was so happy. John tipped a bit of beer on Mum, which was that cold. She lost her breath. So to get her out of the bad books, we got her and dragged her down to the fence. And we were sort of standing on the fence. And we were sort of on the forward flank, sort of down Richmond end, the Brunton Avenue side, Southern Stand side. And it just come deathly silent. And we sort of looked, and Darren turned around and saw us. Now, you got 100,000 people there, and he's doing a lap of honour. He just saw us. He just turned around, stopped, and spotted us, and ran straight over to us and on the fence and gave Mum a kiss and we all leaned over and gave each other a cuddle. And it's sort of one of those things that you look back and go, how he saw us is humble. And that was probably the most special part of the day for me at that point in time. As I said, the ball became special later on, but that was, it was eerie how it all happened.
And what about the the celebrations that ensued after that, what's your favourite story that you can actually tell that's deep-rated?
I think, look, it was pretty, because my brother John was down, because he lived in Queensland.
Yeah.
He was down, and I had a couple of friends of mine, and we had it was quite a big. They left. They went to England on the Wednesday night, which thank God, because had they not, I don't think I would have had a job, because I didn't make it to work because I was drinking with Darren and John the whole time. But during the celebrations, I remember one stage we sort of got split up, and probably a bit long to tell the story, but ended up at the Hilton Hotel and down the laundry chute looking for Darren, and he sort of, the reason that I got stuck there, and he rang Mum, who was home, he said I was there, and it was the only reason I got out. So, and then we proceeded to go on and up Doms, the tunnel, and the rest is history again.
And does it hit you now, like the enormity of what, like breaking the premiership drought, like for the Collingwood Footy Club, and actually being in that inner sanctum? Does it hit home even now? I know that, we weren't to know what was going to happen 12 months later, but just the enormity of the history of breaking the premiership drought for the Collingwood Footy Club.
Oh, look, at the time, yeah. I suppose at first, because we all grew up St Kilda supporters. And it wasn't till Darren went to Collingwood in 84.
Yeah.
And so I followed the family, obviously followed Darren, and I did a little stint at 87. But so we weren't those long-suffering Collingwood supporters. So it sort of come to us it probably sort of was harder, it sort of hit hard home a lot harder for a lot of other supporters, because they'd been there for so long and suffered all that pain of losing all those grand finals. Well, we didn't sort of go for that. But the enormity, I suppose, comes with the club. And obviously, and then after, obviously, Darren, and I still get people come up to me today talking about Darren. Like, I go to the footy, obviously not this year, but I go to the footy and I still get people come up and people say, some people go, I know you get sick of that. I go, no, not at all. I could talk about Pants till the cows come home, and I'm very proud. And that's just the enormity of the club. Collingwood's a huge football club, and the only thing that sort of that hurts at the moment is when something goes wrong or someone's in a bit of trouble, Darren's name seems to come up, and that sort of hurts Mum a bit. But that comes with the territory, I suppose. But you take the good with the bad. But it's a huge club, and the club's been wonderful to us.
But also I think when it comes to, some of the Larrikins type players, they're everyone's favourite players, because they have everyone likes them because they're not straight down the line. They're a bit rough around the edges. Every club has one, and even Collingwood over the journey, you could say Swanee's been like that, or you could even say Glenn Archer's been like that, or Wayne Carey's been like that. I think that does happen because I think people love the fact that they're just not straight down the line, that there is a bit of that redemption, that, they might muck up every now and again, but you know what? Overall, they've got a great heart.
Well, I must admit, I feel sorry for the players of today and the scrutiny there. And it was hard enough back. It was bad enough back in the day, like when Darren was playing. But I suppose we can all only thank our lucky stars that there was no phones, cameras, that sort of stuff back at the old tunnel days. But because nothing ever went wrong in the tunnel, we were all
not at all.
Always angels there. But you look back now and go, I do feel sorry for them. And look, even for instance, like the other day, you look at that billionaire who got up on the yacht and broke the COVID rules and gets fined $1,500, and then you get the Richmond players and Bucksnet get fined $25,000. It doesn't add up to me. And I say to my partner, my wife Christy, all the time that there's times there that you look at, and I understand that they're the most drug tested players, and I've got no drama with them copping their whack. But everyone else gets away with what they don't.
Yeah,
I'm going, I've got no drama doing that, but why don't we drug test the police? Why don't we drug test the lawyers and that sort of stuff? Put them through the same scrutiny. But it just doesn't go that way. And I know they get a lot of things that are good, but it must be tough for them.
This episode is brought to you by National Make Good Solutions, experts in taking your commercial property back to the day it was built at the end of your lease. And look, so we fast forward to it's 1991. And tomorrow's October 7, but Yeah, I didn't realise until I looked into this, Sean, that it was actually that particular day. It was meant to be a day where Collingwood were going to be having a premiership reunion. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So of all days, and then obviously we have the tragic circumstances that happened. But where were you when you found out what had happened?
It was early morning. I worked for Australia Post, and I remember I was at work, and so I used to get up at 4 o'clock and 4 or 5 o'clock and go to work. And my mum rang me. My mum was lost for words and didn't know how to say it. And I remember to this day she still sort of says sorry to me, but she said, Darren. I'm going, what? And she was Darren. She couldn't say anything. And I'm going, what's wrong, Mum? And she says, he's dead. And I went, what? And so I just sort of dropped the phone and ran home. And the hardest thing for that, and still to this day, I'm still a bit dirty on, bring things up on the establishment for letting things out. But my late father, who, and then I obviously got home, and my nana used to live with us at the time, so I told her. And then I couldn't get hold of my father. My father did a milk run. He used to work for, did a milk run in his truck. So I rang his work, and my father still hasn't found this out. And I'm ringing him, and we obviously no mobile, so I rang his work, and they said, listen, we need to get hold of him. There's been a family tragedy. And so they've gone the opposite run to the way he goes and found him on the side. My father heard it on the radio. And to this point in time, it still sort of bothers me because my father ended up taking his own life. He struggled for years and years, and I don't think that really helped. I think sort of things, with the media and that sort of stuff could have been held until at least the family found out. Mm. And as I said, my father struggled for that for many, many years, and obviously he's not with us now. But it was a tough day, and at the end of the day, it's sort of something you never get over, but you have to learn to live with it. And I had to be strong for my parents because that didn't happen because John was in Queensland at the time, and he flew down. But it's still to this day, like tomorrow's 29 years, and I still sort of, I always go up and visit him and take a beer up and have a beer with him, and it's a shame that I've got 2 boys now. My oldest is nearly 6, and he's Kobe, and my youngest one, he just turned 4, and his name's Daz, so D-A-Z, and he is a fully fledged lunatic. So I must take after his mother, but I'd say that all the time. But no, and he looks just like a Millane too. So it's quite funny. It's good memories. And you
were saying before that when you first walk into the house, like this is. So for people that don't know, I was very fortunate that Sean and the family found out that I was such a Darren Millane fan, and I've actually got number 31. They gave me my actual football number. So I got 31 of 542. So that is one of my prized possessions that I've got. But I know that you've actually got, Sean, there's only one thing I'm shitty about with this. I'm not in it.
As I said, when we went through, because Jamie Cooper did a magnificent job and going through it, and we were going through all the different stories. And when I sit down with people, I tell them all the stories behind it. And there's with next to the football there at the front, Mum's sort of leaning over the fence, and you can't really see it from here, but she's got some pants, which is how he got his nickname. And then the bus is in the back left-hand corner, the bus incident with him and Banksy. And there's Fennick in there, because Fennick is a good mate of Fennick, and a couple of my friends are in there too. My wife's in there, my family. It's sort of got to the point where Jamie Cooper said, well, we've got to stop here. He goes, and Dougie Hawkins and Spud Frawley for their Tassie incident. They're up in the back in the terrace as well. So there's quite a few stories. And I'm actually, when people see for the first time, I actually get proud again because I can sit down and tell them about them all.
And sorry, I was actually going to mention that. So when you walk into the front door at your house, I know that, you've actually got it now, like where, people can actually see it and it's prominent. And I think the boys, as you mentioned, they're all understanding how great their uncle was. Yeah,
well, we sort of come in, and it was only a friend of mine, Sobsy. He's a mad Collingwood supporter. His son coming in some downlights, because my wife and I just bought my family home because my mum's just gone into a retirement village. So I'm sort of wrapped that my boys are grew up where Darren and I did. But when you walk in, and he suggested we put a spotlight in. So, yeah, okay. because that was more his field than mine.
Yeah.
It's come up really well. Basically, I've got the same as that print. It's a bit bigger. It's actually a canvas copy, so it actually looks like the actual painting, but it's not, because the actual painting is just huge. It's too big. It's sort of, you couldn't take up the whole wall in the lounge room. So that's sort of in storage. But it's a good size. And as soon as you come in, my boys, they go past all the time, and they're now asking questions, about their Uncle Darren. And it's funny now because my eldest, he's just, for some reason, and I haven't pushed anything on him, every night I put him to bed, he has to sing the Collingwood theme song. That's just sort of popped out of nowhere. My wife, I said, I don't know. He just wanted to start singing it. He must have heard it when I was watching the footy and one of the games they won, and now I have to sing that to him when he goes to bed. So as they get on, they're asking questions, but it's cute the way they do it, because we're outside and it's dark. You look up and especially Daz will go, Uncle Darren's up in the sky. I go, yeah. So obviously when they get older, we'll have to tell them a bit more. But no, it makes me proud that they're starting to ask questions.
Well, when did the enormity of what Darren meant to so many people hit you?
Well, you look, when it sort of happened, obviously prior, it was funny because we used to go out and when I was with Darren and someone would say Millane, and I'd turn around and go, yeah. And they'd sort of look at me a bit funny because they didn't know me, and Pants would go, he's a Millane. And that was our running joke. We used to do that all the time. Well, I knew back then, but look, after it sort of happened, and the amount of people who come up to us and said things that we didn't know about the things he'd done for them, and as I see today, like, well, not this year, but last year, I just go to the footy. I quite often just go to the social club where they have their social club, because I know I can go there, watch the footy, because if I walk through the crowd, there's still people, you go, there's Millane. And some people think it's a bit rude, but I can tell you, I'm proud of it, and it's still to this day. So look, when sort of what happened too, we that morning of obviously the tragedy, we were sort of sitting there, and Craig Kelly rang me and said, CUB have donated 25 slabs. Because back then everyone drank cans or stuff. He says, oh yeah, that's nice. And obviously, yourself, when you go to someone if you lose a friend, you'll pop into the house and you'll have a couple of cans, and then you'll sort of say your respects and go. There was that many people come through the house. The 25 slabs were gone by Wednesday, and they donated another 25. And so we drank 50 slabs, and it was gone by the following Monday in a week. And that was sort of just people coming past, sort of paying respect. So that sort of, then it was just unbelievable. And to this day, he's still got the record of the death notices in the paper. So the enormity sort of hit us then, and it still sort of strikes me now when people talk to me.
Can you imagine? I know he did harbour aspirations to captain the Collingwood Footy Club. I was actually thinking about this today. Can you imagine what sort of captain he would have been? Like, in my head, I'm imagining that he's a cross between like Wayne Carey, Luke Hodge, and Jonathan Brown, all rolled into one. Yeah, look, he's one of those blokes that the time I was there, I remember we went on a pre-season camp and we did some training, and he just commanded respect whether he wanted to or not. It just come. And I must admit, I end up being captain down on a lot of things that I sort of portrayed and come out from me. Were instilled in me by him, and sort of following the way he was. He was one of those blokes that was caring, but hard at the same time. And he was the first one to look after you and back you up if you're in trouble. But he also, if you did the wrong thing, he'd let you know. And if he did the wrong thing, he'd accept it if you told him. And that quality, I think, was something that I gave him. I hope that I'll sort of take it through life, and it's something I want to instill into my boys. But I think you're right. It was one of those things that I don't think it was one of those things that he was desperate to have. I think it was something that was going to happen. Yeah, it just had to happen. He was the bloke to take over from Shorey. Yeah. Now I've got a big one. Should the number 42 be deemed? Should it be worn by someone? Should they bring it out of retirement? Like, I know in 2011 there were discussions to bring it back, but is it something that I know why it was retired, but where do you sit that potentially, you know what, for the right reasons, would it be great to see someone like a Maynard that's running around for Collingwood right now, running around with a great number 42?
I've got an idea on that, a thought that I'd sort of been thinking about today. I'll throw it at you one day. I was thinking, look, when it sort of come out, there was a bit of miscommunication about. We won't sort of go into that story because it was, it was sort of miscommunicated along a lot of lines, and people involved who obviously can't come back at this. So I'd like to leave that alone. But my thought is, I would like them to bring it out once a year, and I thought of this, maybe have a. It could be an internal thing.
Yeah.
Maybe have a fallen round because there's a lot of players who have played for Collingwood that aren't with us anymore, and they have certain times where they put everyone, they have like a day where they put everyone's name on a jumper. Well, I think they could have a fallen round where they could either have everyone's name who's not with the club, who played at the club, who's not with them anymore, on the jumper, and have a round where they do that.
Yeah. And
have the 42, like where the white stripe is over the heart, maybe a little 42 there, or maybe at the back, whether some clubs have a thing at the back, one of those, or maybe someone wears it once a year at his, around about his birthday, and have the same fallen round and have that. I think that's something that's not just Darren, because Darren's not the only player to be at the club who's not with him anymore. A lot of there's been a lot of tragedy over years in a lot of different clubs. But this is sort of something I think they could do internally, have a fallen round for respect to all the people who played at Collingwood, and bring it out for maybe that. It's just a thought that I've had for quite some time now, but sort of haven't really told anyone.
It'd be a really good gesture. And also, I should make mention, I am great mates with Joe Cesari and Dom Camillo and all those guys. They did get Club 42 up and running, which was a great coterie at Collingwood for a while. I'm not sure if it's still going anymore, though.
Yeah, no, it has been still going. It's still one of those things that the mum and I, obviously it's a bit different now with kids and that for the last few years, but mum and I used to go quite a bit. It's a little bit different to when Dom and Joe, yes, and I haven't seen him for a while, but when I see him, it's like we sort of caught up with him yesterday, and that was special when it first started for us.
Yeah.
I think that obviously there's different people run it now, and it's obviously a category, so it's obviously for the clubs, not for us. No, that was sort of special when it first came out for us as well. It was a really nice gesture from Dom and Joe and the boys to start that, and because you remember Dom's when Dom's had it back in the day, it was there was all photos of Club 42 around. And we used to have golf days, which were special days. A little bit different these days, but no, it's still going, and Mum's still, we're still invited to go to the dinners and that, so it's still special for us.
When you go to the MCG, or not this year, but when you've been over the last few years, how do you react to so many Collingwood supporters that are still wearing number 42 on their jumpers today?
I love it. I sort of go down. I actually look for it now. Because I obviously don't go to the footy as much as I'd like to. I've been involved in footy over the years, so you couldn't go. But the last few years I've got, as I said, apart from this year, I've got a few friends that I sort of like to go a few times a year and get there. And no, it's still special. I look and just smile sometimes. I have some mates who sort of will see and just look at me, and we sort of just nod at each other. We know that they know that it's special to me, and then we just go and have a quiet beer and salute the big fella and hope the pies get up.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I'm pretty sure that the club have actually got an award that's named in Darren's honour at the club, haven't they? What is that?
It's sort of evolved. It's changed over the years. It's sort of been different reasons, but now it's the best team, man, best clubman. And I know for a fact that I still go to the Cape. Well, obviously won't be going this year, but Mum and I go. And that's Mum's night of nights, where Mum goes and Mum gets up on stage and she presents the trophy. And it's a special night for her. It's a special night for the family, but especially for her. That's her night. So I just go along. I tag along as the +1, and I used to do that for a while. And now as my wife comes with me, so we sort of have our night. And every player that's won it, and we're sort of still sort of blown away by the players today who obviously don't know Darren, but the nice words that they all speak about and how they say they cherish the fact that that's the award they've won. Really. It's special to us, so I like to go just to see who wins, and I always go up and say hello and have a bit of a chat with them. And they're always, as I said, that what they say about it for the people who didn't know him makes me proud.
Is that there is no good part about not being able to, have a beer with Darren, and like you and I both having drinks. So when you see both of us are drinking at the moment, which hasn't been done on my podcast or YouTube platform, wherever you're watching, I did suggest this to Sean because
you did.
It was like sitting down with an old mate, and for me to be able to sit down and chat about someone that was your favourite player as a kid, and then I've had a lot to do. Well, not a lot to do, but anytime I see Sean over the journey, it's always having a beer and always have a chat with one another. So I've actually just lost my train of thought then while I was rambling on.
We had a few beers at Leveson.
Yes. No, we did have a few beers at Leveson. But look, from a personal point of view, I don't think I've ever told you this story and I know that you'll remember it once I do tell you this, that when they renamed the MVP trophy, there was many years ago when it went from the MVP to the Lee Matthews Trophy.
Yep.
Obviously, all the past winners got invited, and I was a past winner, and obviously Darren was a past winner. But obviously, with everything that's happened, there was yourself and your mum Denise that were there, and as fate would have it, for someone that was an absolute Collingwood tragic and loved Darren, it is one of my most cherished football memories that I could ever have, that I was fortunate enough to sit next to you and your mum at the MVP, and we all got the the Lee Matthews Trophy that's sitting up behind me. But for me, that was a Collingwood nut. It almost seemed like it was a bit of fate that I was lucky enough to sit next to you guys, and in the end, I was like a little bit like a little kid, like that I'm sitting there, just I was wrapped that I'm sitting next to you and your mum, and to be able to, to be able to sit down and have a chat like we are. And actually, before we go, I know there is one thing over in the background there that we really need to cover off. That's, I think, a great memory of you and your brother. I know I've spoken about my little bit, but I think we really need to cover off that great Collingwood jumper in the background.
Before you go there, I'll just show you something. That's one of my. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. As soon as you mentioned it, I forgot it was in there. So, as I said, I was sort of renovating and just sort of moved in.
They're bloody heavy, aren't they? Yeah,
I know. So everything's sort of stored away. But I remember I just had that sitting there. So you just reminded me of that one. Sorry, go on. Sorry.
No, I was just saying about look, we always talk about on Fork in the Road about it's usually a photo that means the world to them. But in your circumstance, I think there's done better than your. Well, I'll let you tell the story about those two great jumpers behind you.
Well, actually, when you mentioned to me, you said about a photo. I've actually got one photo that's very special to me. It's a picture of me holding the Premiership Cup for Dandenong and Darren hold the Premiership Cup from Collingwood.
Yeah.
But what people don't realise was Darren was never in that photo. We always said that we'd do that for Mum and Dad, but obviously never got the chance. So I ended up getting my cousin, and we had the photos with the cups. And I had a bloke who was a sponsor of the footy club at the time, the photographer, and that's why he took my cousin out and superimposed my brother in it.
Yeah,
it's one of the me special photos that I've got of us two holding the two cups, but it was actually never taken. But no, what I've got here is obviously Darren's grand final jumper, as we can see.
It's amazing how good the Mullan jumpers still keep. Yeah, I mean that still looks like it's brand new.
Oh yeah. But that was, as I said, that was, and that the old collars. Remember the old collars?
Yeah.
Had the old woolen jumper with the collar. But that was, you got the ground floor. That's Darren's actually jumper's one of my cherished possessions because I've also got.
And Sean, that's the actual match day jumper.
Yeah, that's it.
That's in cracking nick.
You can tell. Yeah, it's got a couple of little marks on it because obviously you don't wash them after the grand finals. But it's amazing they don't smell. Because mine was never washed too, and mine's you can see mine's a bit dirty, but that was my jumper back in the day, the old VFA premiership. But those two jumpers, what I've always wanted to do was get. I always thought that one day I'd have a pool room.
Yeah.
Want to get like a double glass frame or something to have the two jumpers up. But also another special one, we both got state jumpers. Darren with the big V and I had the big VFA one.
Yeah.
And we both had the same number. It was number 13. And that was another two jumpers that are special to me. And that was another thing. I always wanted to put the four jumpers together. And so one day I'll get them up on the wall somewhere and I'll be able to show them off.
And any reason why you both chose number 13 of all?
No, state. You don't choose; they just give them to you. And obviously, Darren's was 87, and mine's was 96. And it wasn't sort of till I got home and certain jumpers said, "Oh, we're the same number." I didn't even know at the time. So just one of those. It's sort of fun. It's those things that sort of you look back on. The Eerie just sort of coincide. Like my 100th game was on Darren's birthday. And then I go through all the things, and it's happened to me. Like, Darren played 147 games, and my 147th game was a final. But back in the day, and one year they played the finals at Victoria Park.
Yeah,
we had the visitors' rooms. I don't know if you remember the coaches box at Victoria Park was had to climb that ladder.
Yeah,
we were playing. I think it was Werribee, and they had a big team of selectors that couldn't get up there, so we swapped rooms. So I've walked in and thrown my bag on top of where Darren's locker would have been. And Darren played 147 games. It was my 147th game. These things all through my career, there's a lot of things that just sort of were eerie. And that was, obviously, I look back now and you're proud of those things, but it's weird that way it all pans out.
I know you've had a lot of eerie things happen like that.
Yeah.
Like whether it's been, like you think about it, even with the ball, like then you talk about your 100th game and then you swap rooms and it's, very, very eerie.
Yeah, as I said, but you sort of look back now and at the time you sort of don't think too much of it, but look back now and go, it's just weird at how it all panned out that way. And but sort of something you can talk about, and it's always, as I said, people, I go to the footy, people sort of, oh, you okay to talk? I said, oh, I love talking about Darren. As I said, talking about till the cows come home, and it makes me proud. And I'm glad my boys are starting to get that way. And I've got some wonderful stories to tell them. A lot of them won't be on air, but we had some fun times over the years, and we were very close. And that's sort of one of the things that sort of look back on. You cherish that I had that relationship with my brother, because I'd sometimes see people who and families that are distant and don't get along, and it sort of hurts me to see people like that.
Yeah.
So I'd give anything to be in that position now, but I'm not. So I just cherish what we did have, and it's it's a pleasure. As I said, it was a pleasure today talking about it, and cheers, mate. I'm glad you rang me up.
I know, and you know what? The other thing that's a little bit eerie is just think on the weekend. There was 30 years ago that in the finals, Collingwood played West Coast, and they ended up beating the Eagles in the finals, and they've now bookended it. It's happened again.
Exactly. It's funny too, because people I work with now, my boss who's Mad Tigers, he was saying, they'll talk about that goal that Dakes kicked, that one that Dakes kicked with Pants.
Handball, yeah.
But that ended up being one of those Toyota ads, because it was Dakes' favourite goal. And I look back now, and Dakes, who's a super bloke and was great mates with Darren, and I see him today, he's one of, I don't know how well you know Dakes, he's one of the nicest blokes you meet.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
For him to say the amount of goals he kicked, amazing ones too, that was his favourite one, and Darren was involved in that too. So you just look back, and as I said, there's so many things that I can look back to be proud of. So, I'm happy, mate. It's you are. I suppose you can't see, but my computer screen is that painting.
Oh, the one that I've got there.
Yeah. And so the people that worked there, because obviously started in Marcus, who was my boss, who's unfortunately Geelong supporter, but
He's a Geelong supporter, yes.
But at work, and people walk past, and since obviously the people I've met since I've started, they sort of have a look at him and go, "Oh, he's a big boy." Yeah, he was a big boy. But I still say I didn't cover it in the backyard. That's another story.
Yeah, it is. But no, look, it's like I said, for someone that's idolised your brother over a long period of time, I've been privileged, and I'm very thankful that holds pride of place, and whether it's myself or Glenn Archer or anyone that loved Darren, but even more importantly that, over the journey when I've got to know you and have a few beers with you, that whenever we see one another, it's always great to catch up. And I know we'll hit pause in a minute, but then we'll probably stay on the line and we'll keep having a few more beers. So on behalf of everyone, it's been fantastic to sit down with you and have a chat about you and have a chat about Darren.
Mate, cheers, big fella. Mate, thanks for the opportunity. As I said, I love talking about pants, so here's to the big fella. Here's to all the people who watch the podcast, and thanks heaps, mate.